All right, guys, it's time for the Next Level Guy Show, a men's interview, interest, and improvement-focused podcast featuring interviews with the greats from all industries to help you better your life. Each week, a new episode features an interview with one of the greats, covering all aspects of their story, from life hacks to tips and protocols that have allowed them to live life on the next level. We then highlight concrete action steps that you can use to improve your life. And now, your host, Ian Dawson Mackay.
And today's guest is Rob Kenney. Rob's father left him and his 7 siblings when he was 14 years old, and they had to learn to fend for themselves. He wished that he had somebody who could teach him the basics, such as how to tie a tie, jump-start a car, unclog a drain, use power tools, as well as succeed in life. But he and his siblings had to figure these things out on their own. Now a father himself, Rob decided that he would rather help people out by providing how-to tips as well as advice, and even throw in some bad dad jokes as well. He started a YouTube channel for anyone looking for fatherly advice, and in the course of 3 months gained a following of nearly 2.5 million subscribers, with millions of views for his how-to and inspirational videos. He covers a wide range of topics and shows you how to do a wide range of life skills that you might not know otherwise, in a supporting, caring and loving environment where he aims to help others better their lives. He's now released an awesome new book, and in the book Rob shares a story of overcoming a difficult childhood with the strength of his faith and family, and he offers inspiration and hope throughout. In addition, he provides 50 practical do-it-yourself instructions, 30 of which will be unique to the book, illustrated with helpful line drawings. And in this interview, we discuss how the lack of a male role model can affect you, how to learn the key hard and soft skills that may come up in your life, how to find a positive role model in your own life, how to view life as an adventure rather than as a victim mentality, and so much more. And now, let's get to the interview. Thank you so much for coming on. It's an absolute honour to have somebody like you. You are I'd say the personalization of my site. You're the type of person, you've gone off and done things. You're living on a next level in your life. You're helping so many people. But can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How do you introduce yourself? Because you've done an amazing thing and helped so many young people. But
well, thank you.
How would you explain yourself?
Yeah, thank you for the kind words. When you said explain yourself, it's, over here saying, please explain yourself would be, means you need to figure out what anyway, getting off on a tangent. But yeah, so I started this channel during the pandemic just because it's something I could have used when I was younger, because my dad left when I was 14. And, I learned how to do a bunch of different things, a lot of times the hard way, just asking people and trying to, and sometimes it was embarrassing to ask people. And so I was hoping with my channel, I thought of it a few years ago, and I was just hoping with my channel that I would be able to help 30 or 40 people that in a comforting way where you could come in and learn something without getting yelled at and feeling stupid. You could just come in and you can rewatch the video. And so I thought of it a few years ago. And then during the pandemic, I had some extra time on my hands. So my daughter's been a big part of this. She helps me with my Instagram and with my Facebook. And then plus she's great to bounce things off of. Our goal, my wife and I, our goal was to raise great adults, not great kids. We wanted to, and now my grown-up kids are my best friends. We talk all the time and have a great relationship. And so, with the channel, I was just trying to help people that could maybe use a little encouragement and a little nudge in a good direction. The internet, there's a lot of bad things on the internet, and I was hoping to do something wholesome that just walk alongside people. Nothing fancy, I'm still recording on my phone. I don't have any fancy equipment.
Because I think that's quite a big reason for your success, is you put so much effort and there's humility there as well, and it's such a supportive community as well. It's such a lovely, every video I've seen, I don't think I've seen you get annoyed once. It's you. You're very open and friendly and supportive through it, and you show things from different angles and that. And like we were discussing before we started, it's something I wish we had when we were younger, because you don't get taught this stuff at school. You get taught all these specialist topics, but we don't get the key skills about grooming ourselves, looking after ourselves, cleaning ourselves. You've got videos on like helping your lawn grow. You've got videos on setting up a camp stove and things like that. All these kind of like really kind of weird things that you have to find out for yourselves. How did you find not having a dad in that role? The rites of passage you would maybe have. I mean, my father's in my life, but he's not that hands-on. He's not that kind of person who'll sit down and show me things. It's really been my mother that's kind of done those kind of roles, like putting up a clothing rack or things like that. How did you find that change? Because I struggled with it because I was never very handsy. How did you encounter that when you were younger?
Yeah, I'm fairly curious, so I like to take things apart and try to figure out how they work. Gets me in trouble at times. One trick I've learned with that, and I've shared this with my viewers, is these days you can record yourself on your phone. If you're going to take something apart and you're worried about being able to get it back together, just record yourself on your phone taking it apart, so then you can go, oh, that's right, that's where that piece goes.
Yeah.
Pretty simple thing. When I was younger and you were younger, it wasn't so easy to have to record something, then immediately be able to look at it, right? And now we have this technology that makes that fairly simple. So I've learned a lot of stuff. I learned a lot of stuff from my brother. My brother's very handy. He's when my dad left, I went to live with my brother and his wife. At the time, so I learned a lot from him. But there was also things that I was a little embarrassed to ask my brother about, because he's my brother. He's my brother. He's not my dad, and maybe you're embarrassed to ask your dad too at the same time. And so I kind of, a lot of times we turn to friends. I learned how to tie a tie from my roommate when I was 19. He's the one that really, he was always well groomed. He always looked sharp. And he would always say, Rob, you got to pay attention to that knot. And so in my video, I actually say, because as you're building the tie, you do kind of got to pay attention to the knot. Because if you don't, at the end, you have this big, big knot, so you got to, anyway. So I've learned a lot of things that way. And I've, learned a lot of things just by asking questions and, through trial and error. So I was trying to make a channel that would be boiled down. You're not spending a half hour of me trying to entertain you. I'm more trying to get to the heart of the problem and solve it for you so you can get out. I don't want people spending their lives on the internet. We spend too much time on our phones and on the internet, and I'm guilty too. We need to be outside enjoying life. Life's too short.
No, I definitely agree. I mean, I was just thinking when you were talking about the tie there of the first time I tried to do it for a job interview. And even now, I'm kind of still thinking, I can feel myself try to go back the last successful time I did it. And
Yeah.
I think that's why your site's so great. You just go straight into it. We don't have to go through, you harking products. We don't have to listen, and you're just sitting there and you show the common mistakes. And, you're just that nice person that we wish we had with us, showing us how to do things. I mean, that is something I think a lot of young men are missing in their lives at the minute, is the father figure. It's somebody that can actually stop. And, how did you notice anything in yourself? Like, were you angry? Did it annoy you? I mean, I still don't have a great relationship with my dad at times. And that it bugs me that we haven't got that connection that me and my mother would have. Did you find yourself reacting in any particular way?
So I share in my book about how I forgave my dad, and that wasn't easy. I can only speak for myself, though. Forgiving him and moving past that was huge in my life. It set me free. At the time, when I kept chewing on what he did over and over again, it wasn't helpful. It wasn't productive. And then I also found that if I was going to wait to ask him to ask for forgiveness, I may never get it. And so I finally just let him go in my 40s. And yeah, it's the best decision I ever made. Set me free. I was drinking the poison somehow hoping it would hurt him, and really it was killing me. And so, yeah, I'm free on the other side of it. So I'm very grateful for that. So sorry, I kind of got off on a tangent. What was your original question?
No,
But
no,
I think
I
that,
was just
yeah.
wondering, like, did you notice any kind of, like, for a lot of people, not having a father figure in their life kind of lets them, makes them angry, and they can go make mistakes, and they can kind of,
Yeah.
they can react against the family lifestyle and go and drink and things like that. But you seem to go the other way and just create and just do good constantly. What was it that made you think, I'm going to take this energy and I'm going to go away and do good in the world?
Yeah, I'm a man of faith, so I would be doing a disservice if I didn't bring that up, because that's very important to me. I wake up in the morning and have my devotion, and
Hmm.
so I'm not ashamed of that. And like I said, I would be doing a disservice if I acted like, oh, I'm this, uh, I'm is what you. I'm what you should aspire to. That isn't the case. I'm just doing the best I can, wanting to leave a legacy for people to be able to, yeah, to be helpful. If I'm known for loving God and loving people, I'll take it if that's my legacy, because I think that's what we're called to do. That's what Jesus said to do, and so I'm just trying to live that out to the best of my ability. I fail just like anybody else. I'm not the standard. And I shared in one of my videos, be careful putting people up on a pedestal, because if you do, they'll disappoint you eventually. People are just people. We fail. And so I even have to be careful. I'll share a funny story with you. So I was at the store at a crowded supermarket a couple months ago, and I was pushing my cart, and this lady came up behind me and just rammed my Achilles, with her cart. And I turned around, like, instantly I wanted revenge. I'm like, what are you doing? But I'm like, I got to remember, people might recognize me, and I got to maintain my cool. So, yeah, please don't think that I'm always calm, because I'm human. And so I get riled up just like anybody else, but I try to control that.
Did you have a rival YouTube channel and just thought, I'll take him out in the grocery aisle?
Yeah, my alter ego. That's funny. We've joked about that, having my alter ego come out, and what I'm thinking, what I'd really like to do, and what I'm actually doing. So kind of funny.
No, I mean, it's because it's definitely something that comes across as how open and supportive and friendly you are in your videos. But when you first started the channel, how did you overcome that sort of fear of starting a channel? Because putting yourself out there, it's very nerve wracking, but you're a natural on the camera.
Oh, you're very kind. I'm a bit of an introvert myself. If you asked me to speak in front of a large crowd, I probably would fight it and say no. I've finally, I think I've gotten better with that because of all this. It's been therapeutic to be on interviews and on TV and speaking with people that I never imagined I'd be speaking with. So
Mm.
I probably would be able to do it a lot better than I would, 2 years ago. But I didn't look at it like I was talking to a big audience. Again, I thought I was going to help 30 or 40 people, and I was trying to speak to the camera like I was speaking to my own kids, and just trying to download information I've learned over the years, trying to just share stuff with that I've learned. And one thing you mentioned earlier too, I think I need to address too, is I have sponsorships reaching out to me uh, weekly, a couple
I
times a
can
week. I get
imagine.
different
Yeah.
sponsorships, and so I'm trying to be faithful with those too. I mean, if it's a good quality product that I've used, I mean, as a dad, I would recommend certain products to my kids, right? I mean, if I have a good experience with a drill,
Mhm.
and my son wants to buy a drill, I would say buy this brand because this is a great brand. So I have to be careful with that, because if there's a product that I don't have any experience with, then I can't recommend it. And I had that with a company. I won't mention any names, but they reached out to me, sent me some product, and I said, really, I don't feel good recommending it because I don't have history with this. 3 or 4 years down the road, it might be an amazing product, but yeah. So and also too, I do have people that, and they write to me and we meet and stuff, and they say, these big name sponsorships, and they say, we just want to support what you're doing. We love what you're doing. We want to support it. And so if we can work together, so they're coming in humbly, they're not asking me to wear their logo or something. They're just wanting to support what I'm doing. And also they have a good name brand. And so I don't have a problem necessarily doing that, because I am trying to figure out how I can make a living at this, because right now I'm still working. I've got the sponsorships, I've got interviews, I've got my life is a little bit chaotic, and I'm trying to simplify. And it would be much more simple if I could work with some quality sponsors to help get behind what I'm trying to do. If that makes sense. So
No,
I
it
don't want to
certainly
be
does.
salesy, but I do got to figure out the long-term vision for this.
Because it is something I do notice in other channels is as they grow and they get, they start going down the sort of rabbit hole of affiliate marketing, and
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
suddenly they come in and they've, like you're saying, they've got the certain brands everywhere, and it's, they change. And I think that's the thing. It's, you're now 3.5 million on your YouTube. You've spoken to Kevin Hart. You've done like TV interviews the whole time, but you're still the same person. And I think that's the amazing thing about it. It hasn't changed you. The vision you had for it to help and support people who need this, it's still there. So what do you think about the success? How is it, what do you think of it when you look back and go, wow, like I have helped so many people. You're the dad to internet millions of people. How does that affect you?
Yeah, again, I think I'm grounded because of my faith. I don't think higher of myself than I ought to. I understand that life is temporary. I'll be here for a time and then I'll be gone. I just visited the Arlington Cemetery in Washington, D.C., big cemetery. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but over here in Washington, D.C., where they, a lot of, like, JFK is buried there. And if you spend any kind of time in a cemetery, dwelling and looking out, I mean, it's a sea of graves. There's just headstones everywhere. These are lives that were lived. They were here and they're gone. They had their time here and they're gone. And so I think it's important to keep that perspective of, I'm here for a window of time. What can I do to leave a legacy of trying to be a loving person, helping as many people as I possibly can. And I'm very grateful for the platform that I've been given to be able to do that. That's my perspective on it. I recognize that, I've lived long enough to know that things are temporary. It might be amazing this week, but so I've been in sales, and you might, win an amazing account, and then the next week you might lose a big account. And so I've tried to maintain that stability in order to, live my life, because otherwise you'd be a wreck if you were getting too elated when you won something big, or get too down when you lose something. Life's pretty short. I found that, I've done my best to try to maintain an even keel with that.
Yeah, because it kind of goes into the principle, I think it's memento mori, that Tim Ferriss talks about, remember that you will die, that we're short. And I think you're definitely going to leave out an amazing legacy of helping so many people. It's like there were so many people kind of in your comments saying, I wish I had this when I was younger. This is amazing. I feel like I know this now. But how do you start learning these skills? How do you even start planning what to include in your show? Because you have such a wide range of skills. And I was struggling to see an area that you weren't incorporating into your channel, and videos that I've watched over and over. But how do you start learning the skill? How do you start portraying it and working out how you're going to do this? To make a video, like.
I don't know. Does it look like I've planned it out? A lot of times I'm just kind of, that's one I should do. And then I kind of, and then I do my best to try it. And I'm trying to create content, again, that would help be like I'm speaking to my own kids, but it's also for me. It's like, I probably should zoom in on that. And like I got one, I just recorded on a percolator, a coffee percolator. Because if you go camping with my camping stove that I just did, a coffee percolator is kind of the next thing. When you go camping, you like to wake up and have coffee. and so I zoomed in on a few things to kind of show, what that looks like. Cause I think, need to be able to see it. I've watched YouTube videos and I'm like, I can't even tell what the guy's doing. He's turned his back on me and he's done something and then there it is,
Yeah.
so yeah. So I do try to, and like I said, I do try to boil it down because there's a lot of videos out there. I've watched YouTube to learn how to do some things too. And, you watch a 20-minute video to get your 1-minute nugget. If you would have just got to the point, it would have saved me a lot of time. So, so I try to do that. So I'm always keeping that in mind. And I think I got, with the dad chats, with reading children's books, with now I've started a new video series on American football, kind of explaining the rules of that. I think I got enough things in my head that I can download for probably 3 or 4 years before I then have to figure out, okay, now what am I going to do next? But there's so many sports out there. Golf, I understand how golf works, and I had to learn that just kind of through trial and error and asking questions. And so I think that is a whole series. Baseball would be a series too. So I think there's a lot of things, and you're probably the same way. You probably know a lot of different things when you actually think about all the different things that maybe you had to learn. I think you'd be surprised at how much you actually know that might be useful to other people that maybe you take for granted that you know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's definitely something that when I've had a conversation with my mother, she would say, okay, take your question and Google it because there's 10,000 other people who have Googled that question. And it's like you're saying, you go into a YouTube video and you're like, okay, let's get to it. Let's get to the point I need. And then, like you're saying, they turn their back or the video cuts out. And you're kind of like, okay, now I need to go find another 5 or 6 videos to show me. And that's what I like about your video. It's you show it from different angles. You show you simplify it as well. Like you make sure that even for the people who are struggling or maybe it's not their area, you show them how, like, where things are connected, and you make sure they see it. And you say, don't worry, if this happens, you can then do this.
Yeah.
But how do you encourage somebody, because you're a father, you've probably done this with your own kids, how do you encourage them that they can do these things? People who go, oh no, I'm not technical, oh no, I'm not physical. How do you encourage people to learn these new skills and be open, with an open mindset, that they can learn these things?
Yeah, I think it's baby steps. I always have been big on baby steps, just like if you're unfamiliar with a toilet, just take the lid. I don't know how your toilets look, if they look the same as ours, but you take the lid off the tank. You're not going to hurt anything. Just taking the lid off the tank and go, oh, okay, so what's going on in there, and then put it back on and go, okay, maybe that's over my head, at least. I just want people to at least try, because you've failed already if you don't even try. You gotta. So, and I one thing I compare it to, again, going back to baby steps. When you're a baby and you get up and you try to walk and you fall down. You get up and you try to walk and you fall down. You get up and you try to walk and you fall down. You don't overthink it and just go, I can never do this. I'm not going to walk. As a baby, you just get there. And I think it's kind of the same thing with us. Is I think we give up too quickly and we say, oh, I can't do that. And I've had people, tell me that, like changing a tire, when I showed how to change a tire, that their dad told them, oh, like a woman, their dad told them, oh, that's a man thing. You shouldn't have to learn it. Well, wait a second. What if there's no man around and you're out at night and you get a flat tire? Do you want to just hope somebody nice comes along and helps them with the tire? Or would you rather equip them so that maybe they can solve it for themselves and then they can, get to a safe place? I've never been like that. I've tried to get my daughter and my son to both learn things. And why limit yourself to how to wrap a present? I showed how to wrap a present and people made comments, oh, that's a mom thing. Why is that a mom thing? Maybe your mom does it in your household because people have certain roles and, you only have so much time in the day, and okay, well, she'll take care of wrapping the presents. But why limit yourself and say, I just don't want to learn it because that's a mom thing? I want to encourage people to learn, life's too short. Again, why would you want to be known that, oh, he was good at this, but he, didn't know all these other things that he just refused to learn?
I mean, it's. I completely agree with you. It's like people that say, "No, that's for a man to do. That's a female job," and especially
Yeah,
with the COVID situation, I think people are beginning to realize you're not always going to have a handyman. You're not always going to have somebody that can just nip in and fix your toilet for you. And I think it's made people realizing that it's good to learn these things. And and I think I can counter that. It's like, oh, why are you learning to sew? Why are you learning to do X, Y, Z? But it's like you said, why not learn these things?
right.
That you can use this and showcase. I mean, my mom can put up, like the racks to hang your coats on. She can use a power drill. She can sand, but she can still sew and she can do all these sort of things. So she shows
Love
me
it.
all these sort of variations of things, and I know not
Yeah,
a lot of people have that, and I think that's the beauty of your channel. It's you cover all of that, but you also show them that they are capable of this. Would you say a big thing about learning skills is seeing it as an ability to explore and learn about the world rather than oh, I've got to learn this? It's an exciting thing to do. Is that
it
where a lot of
is.
people go wrong?
Yeah, I think it's empowering. I guess speaking, I can only speak for myself and my own experiences. When, I've seen something, I thought, I don't know that I could do that. And then I do it and I'm like, hey, I did that, and then so the next challenge comes along. Like I share in my book about building my fence for the first time. We moved into a house that didn't have the fence was falling down, and we have dogs, so I needed to get that fence done, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I just kind of figured it out. And then by the time we got done, it was like, hey, I can do this. And now I've done roofing, I've done tiling, I've done sheetrock, I've done some light electrical, just because once you kind of get in, and again, as long as you take it slow and just do as much research as you possibly can before you jump in, I think people get themselves into trouble without planning, and they just jump in and start tearing things apart. Like I said, I think if these days you can record if you're worried about that, just record yourself and record what you tore apart so that you can go back and go, oh, that's where I went wrong.
It's time for a quick break. There are millions of potential products to buy, so how do you know which ones are worth your hard-earned money? Simple. You go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and explore those that will transform and improve your life. You'll find deals, listener exclusives, and special offers with some great companies. Recommendations are 100% honest and only on items Ian has tried or believes in. The companies showcased will make you a better man in all areas of your life. Simply go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and level up.
But a little bit of planning with tile. If you lay flooring, I've done flooring, I've done laminate flooring as well as tile, as well as linoleum too. I don't like linoleum anymore, but tile, with a little bit of planning. One thing I did is I just drew guidelines on the floor, because the tile is going to go over the top of it, right?
Mhm.
And if you're going to lay a tile floor, you want to make sure it's straight, right? So that things are lined up. And so you want to have these guidelines as you're laying it out to where you hit them and make sure, and then you can adjust along the way. If you just kind of lay the tile and go, it's laid and it's crooked,
Yep.
So again, a little bit of planning goes a long way.
So when you find halfway through it, you're like, oh, I veered off 6 inches, and you're just like, it's fine
Exactly.
up here, but when
Yeah. And
I
it's the
think
same way with roofing. Roofing is the same way. If you do roofing, you want to keep checking, make sure you're, and measure, and okay, the roofing is still lined up, because if you don't, it could get off and be at an angle as you're going up your roof.
it's that horrible moment you look back and think, oh, why's that line gone off down? I think
Yeah.
I think that's the joy of it, though. For me, it's the ability to go, I don't know how to do that. Let's go and find out. I
Yeah.
get a lot of, oh, I've broken my phone. And like, because we lived so remotely, it was a case of, okay, let me try to fix it. Let's see what it can do and go from there. And I think that's definitely a lot of young people don't have that as much now, because we've always had somebody that can do it for you. We can always jump in and do it. How would you start working with somebody to do that? Is it like you're just saying, doing the baby steps? Is it just going away and thinking, looking at their life and thinking, okay, instead of asking for help on that, I'm going to do this? How do we build that kind of exploration muscle?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I think again, I would start with baby steps of just like if you don't know how your car works, pop the hood and just look at it. Nobody's around. It's just you. You don't have to be embarrassed. You just got your, you got your hood open and you're going, okay, maybe I know what that is. Okay, I learned where to refill the oil, or I learned where to, refill the antifreeze, or where my brake oil is, or just kind of take it easy. You can do it at your own pace. You don't need. There's no pressure. Nobody else is around. Nobody's judging you. It's just you. So I think it's one of those things where if you just start really, really basic and then go from there, I think that, and give yourself grace, be kind to yourself, because a lot of times we give up before we've even started again and just say, oh, I could never learn this. Well, why? Really? I mean, there's certain things I think that, you got to be careful. You can't, you don't want to try to rewire your house, but certain little things you should be able to do. And you might find you actually really like that. And then next thing that's the career path that you're going down, because you found you had a love for something before that you weren't even willing to try.
Because I mean, it's definitely something I liked about your channel was that you don't just count the physical skills; you also are looking at like integrity and things like that. So you were actually you were kind of encouraging people like how to, like better your garden, how to hang a gate, all these sorts of things. But then you were
Yeah.
talking about more of the sort of the emotional sort of side of things, or the character skills. And I think that was the really good thing, is that you gave them the confidence with the physical skills, but then said, okay, let's talk about becoming better people as much as skilled people. And that's what I really liked about your book, really liked about your YouTube channel. You're making people better versions of themselves. So how would you start looking at those sorts of topics? I mean, is it coming from your faith, or are you looking at what challenges you've gone through with your own kids?
Yeah, I think all of the above. I think, yeah, my faith, I've learned a lot. I pray for wisdom on a daily basis, trying to, be wise in my decisions. And then, in my book, I do share quality character traits that I learned from my siblings. I think it's a good habit to get into, to, learn things from people. You can learn things. Oh, I don't want to do that. You can meet people and go, that's not something I want to incorporate in my own life. And you can also go, boy, that person really, like my sister, was about the importance of family, my oldest sister, and I worked my way through. So just real quick. So my older sister, Mary, and then my brother, Tim, was about, questioning authority in a healthy way. I think it's important to form your own mind. In your own mind, you got to reason through the decisions you're making, instead of, well, this is what, my mom or my dad always said. Well, you got to think for yourself. I think it's
Mm.
important to form your own opinions. And again, in a healthy way, not in a rebellious way, but okay, well, why are we thinking this way, or what have you? And then my brother, Rick, I talk about having a good work ethic, because I think a good work ethic is important, and you sleep good at night, knowing that you put in a good day's worth of work. And then my sister Lori, I talk about encouraging and being an encourager, because I think that's a good quality trait, to encourage people, in a healthy way. And then my brother Joe, talk about not hesitating. You can, a lot of times we can get paralysis analysis, and you overanalyze things, and then you don't ever actually make a move. What, at some point you gotta you gotta make the move, right? And then my brother Don, I talk about being generous. I think is a good way to live your life, holding your possessions with an open hand, so that God can put into it and God can take out of it. I think it's just a good way to live. You don't want to be known for being the cheap guy. You want to be known, you want to, when people think of you, they think good things, that he's not afraid to pull out his wallet when, it's time to pay.
I love that, because that was something that really came across in your videos, in your book and stuff. It's the love that you have for your siblings. It's the ability to see the good in other people, and I think that's something that maybe, if you don't have a male role model, if you don't have a good connection or a good set of friends, a lot of men, especially a lot of young kids, could struggle that they don't have people to chat to and ask for help and just get a bit of guidance in their life. What would you say to those kind of people? Because your community is amazing, but for people who are struggling to find their way in life, what did you learn about your own time there? I mean, I struggled to find good friends that weren't just wanting to go to the pub. I struggled to
Yeah.
find people who wanted to go away and start YouTube channels and all these sorts of things. What advice would you give to people who are looking for their community, their mentors, their role models, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a difficult question, and I think also, I would say for me, I've met some of the best friends that I have from church, from the community that I have there, because we're like minded. Unfortunately, a lot of times the church has hurt people too, which is sad. It saddens me because I think the message in the Bible is a pure, great message of great news. And I think, unfortunately, men get involved or people get involved and we ruin it.
Mm.
I think we start adding rules to it and it's not as beautiful as it was intended to be. I think I've probably met the best people that I know in my life from church. And then I do have my wife is one of 8 kids, and I'm one of 8 kids, and so I immediately, so it's a little hard for me to give advice to people because I have a big family and I'm close to a lot of them, and so I haven't necessarily had to go out too far to meet people, but through work I do try to seek people out, and I think it's okay to be guarded at first and not put yourself out there until you kind of know that you can trust people, because unfortunately, a lot of people will take what you've shared in confidence and want to go blab it around, and so it is hard to find a good friend. I would say but they're worth their weight in gold when you can find them.
Because for me, that was definitely something I struggled with when I was younger. It was like, okay, let's go. What do you want to do? Let's go for a pint. Let's do this. Let's do. There wasn't
Yeah,
that kind of. I felt like we were hitting a plateau. We weren't going off and doing stuff, and because I was in a small village, I didn't know how to go meet new people. And I think that's definitely maybe an area that isn't really encompassed, is asking for help, being open and saying, no, I want more from life, or, like guys hugging other guys. It's sometimes seen as weird, and, it's something you don't do with your guy friends. And I found that when I was younger, it was such a strange thing that these weren't encouraged. You weren't encouraged to tell your friend, "Are you okay?" Like I've
yeah,
struggled with depression when I was younger. Mental health was not really discussed when we were younger, and
yeah,
it's so sad when you see now that we're finally getting the support and services we need for these young people. But how what was your experiences of that sort of things? I mean, how did you cope as you were growing up in that kind of environment? Um, is there was there anybody there that, like, you've talked about the importance of your older brother? What was it he
yeah.
did that kind of gave you the help, the support? Then was it just having somebody to, I don't know, was it a connection, or what was it about your older brothers that gave you the support that you needed during that stage?
Yeah, my brother Rick and I are very good friends, and we, call and talk all the time over different things. And one thing that he always did for me was not let me be the victim. When I
Mhm.
was younger, he kind of talked me through that, and I think he knew ultimately that that wasn't good for me, to kind of keep playing that victim card. Even though I had a legitimate victim card, I think he helped me with that tremendously. Yeah, it's tough. Like I said, I'm not. I think I got to be careful to have a canned answer for especially over such a large amount of people that I'm dealing with. It
Mhm.
really would be much easier if I could actually sit down and talk to each individual, but obviously that's not possible. But yeah, so it's hard to paint with a broad brush, but I think you got to be careful with just getting cynical and thinking, this is horrible. I think it is important to try to because I recently did have somebody, one of my early supporters, reach out to me and say he was in a dark place, and I don't know exactly what that means, but I gave him just a note of encouragement that one thing I've learned over my life is a lot of times when it's kind of a tough time, right around the corner, something amazing. If I can keep that perspective of right around the corner, something else, something might, some blessing might be waiting for me. And you know, um, I want to be around to see it. I want to see what's next. And I've often found that to be the case, where it's like, oh man, I didn't see this coming, and this is great. Even though I might have been really upset at the time. So again, I don't want to make a canned answer, because it's difficult to speak to a large audience about something like that.
Because it's definitely a difficult thing. I mean, it's because we're kind of taught as men to be strong and, be the dominant one and, take on all the challenges. And I think sometimes we forget that we have our emotional needs that we need to be met, and we have to be open and honest. And sometimes just saying to somebody, "Hi, how you doing? Are you all right?" Just
Yeah.
offering the shoulder to lean on. I think that's why your community is helping so many people. They're finding somewhere that we can go and listen to others and say, "Oh, I know this is going to be a stupid question, but just the comments are like, no such thing as a stupid question. Ask." And
Right. Yeah.
and you cover such amazing, diverse topics. So, what advice would you give to somebody who is coming in like a new father, somebody that's maybe been a stepfather to people like that? How would you encourage kids? Because I wish I had somebody that took me aside and said, "Right, let's get some spanners and let's practice this, or let's get some screwdrivers and wire a plug." How would you encourage, like your own kids now, or how did you encourage your own kids to step up and go, right, let's go and practice this, let's work on car maintenance? How did you build in that with them?
Yeah, I just tried to help them, and for selfish reasons, I enjoyed the quality time with them.
Mhm.
I wanted to be able to spend time with them, and there's so many distractions for kids these days too, with our phones and with video games and with so many different things. If you don't make it, if you don't really write it out or whatever, to make sure that this is what I'm going to do on purpose. I'm going to live on purpose, instead of, the window's gone, your kids are gone. And well, I was planning to do that. I think it's important. So I've talked about, this is something that I didn't do, but I have recommended to people that maybe you write out a mission statement, if you're a new dad. Because when you hold
Okay.
your baby for the first time, you promise them the world. I know I did. When I held my daughter, it was like, oh, you are amazing. This is incredible. And you promise them the world, but it's just verbal. I think it might be a good idea. When we start a business, we take the time to write a mission statement. Well, this is more important, in my opinion, than a business. Why not write just 5-6 things down and say, this is what I'm going to do. And you can refer back to that when the times are difficult, to say, and you can adjust it, but start somewhere, write that mission statement. And I'm also trying to encourage people to understand that, a couple things here. You don't have to, if your past wasn't so great, you don't have to repeat the sins, so to speak, of your parents. You can do it differently. You can make the choice to do it differently. And, I'm trying to help people understand that being a dad is cool. It is cool. I love it. There's definitely struggles along the way, but I've enjoyed every minute of it. It's made me who I am today, and I'm very close to my kids. Like I said, to this day, I went out and visited my son. He's on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast, and it was just really enjoyable. Just hung out with him like we're buddies.
I mean, because that is definitely something that I loved about it, was how hands-on you were and how much you kept in touch with their lives, and you put into it. And I think that's something that a lot of men struggle with. It's you're just meant to be the provider, rather than
Yeah.
you're meant to be involved in your kids' lives. And I mean, my dad, he worked his ass off, but he wasn't great at sort of coming up and saying, "You done your homework, you done this and that." He was
Yeah.
like, my role's to work. That's your mother's role to do that sort of thing. And I think we've definitely got a lot closer and a better now. But I think a lot of guys, they kind of go, "Oh, that's what my dad's meant to be like." But I've always said, just because it's the way it was with you, or that's the way it was, doesn't necessarily mean it's the way it needs to be. And
Right.
I'm really glad that now we've come the acceptance of so many different lifestyles and things like that. It's great to see, but we're still not there. And that's why I love channels like yours, because it's an open, honest place that people can go and learn these things. There's always there's Google, there's YouTube, and you've helped so many people. But what's been your proudest achievement to date? What have you looked at your videos, or where should people start with your channel? Because you do so many amazing videos, but what would you send people to, apart from your book, obviously, which we'll get to? But
I don't know. I wouldn't know where you'd begin. Maybe start at the beginning, how to tie a tie. Because I think you can also see that maybe I've grown a little bit as I've gotten my feet underneath me. I've added a dad joke on purpose to every video now. At the very beginning,
I
you'll get
love
to
them.
hear a dad joke before I move on to the lesson. And I didn't do that at first. First dad joke was when I did the stud finder, for obvious reasons. A stud finder is like, I called my daughter and said, "There's a dad joke here. Do I do it?" And she says, "Oh yes, you got to." I'm like, yeah, okay. So that kind of began the dad jokes. And now I try to make sure. So I've got a bit of a routine now where I do an intro and I kind of tell you what you're going to expect, and then I do a dad joke, and then I get into it, and then I kind of do an outro too. Yeah, a couple things that you mentioned too. And one thing that I'm very proud of is my own grown kids. That's probably I feel like was my greatest achievement, more so than my channel. I'm very proud of the people that they are. And here's an interesting thing too. I started when the kids were little saying "I love you." Every time, as much as I possibly could, told them I love them, and I'm proud of them. And just the other day, I was at work and I was in the office having a meeting, and my kids call, and I make them a priority. So I said, just a second, this is my son. He's calling from the East Coast, and we talked, and I said, "Hey, I'm in a meeting. I got to go. I love you. I love you." We both said, "I love you." And then I hung up the phone, and they said, "Oh, that's so sweet." And then like 5 minutes later, my daughter calls, and okay, got it. My daughter, and "I love you. I love you." Okay, bye. I think that's so important. I take it for granted because I think it's just a habit. And even through my kids' tough years, all through their junior high and some of the harder years, we always made a point to say "I love you" when we hang up. I think that's important to tell people that you love them, because again, life's too short, and you don't know how many opportunities you'll have to do that.
It's very true. It's that thing of on your channel when you say "you've got this," or like "I love you," or like being open like that. It's sometimes that's the first time some young people have heard that. They haven't had somebody that said "you mean so much to me," or "I love you," or things like that. And sometimes just hearing that is enough to open them up and take them back from a bad path they're going down, or let them realize that there are people out there who support her, who are maybe not blood, but great friends, or people who are going to go out their way to help them. And that's why I love the fact that you've got the YouTube channel and now you've got the book, and the book's great to have in their house to say, okay, I want to do this. Okay, what did he say about unclogging a toilet? But your channel is there as a kind of, I don't know, you feel like a father to so many people. How I just love the fact that now you haven't changed. You're still the same person that was tying the tie back those days. But what would you say to people about having a routine? For what tools should we have? Is there a kind of a standard thing that you would say we should have? Because you've got Tool Tuesdays.
Yeah.
What equipment would you want a young person to start looking into getting? Is there routines? How do we build these new skills into our lives?
Yeah, I think the Tool Tuesdays that I started with would probably get most people started. I think a drill, I think I haven't done one on a level, even though like we talked about with the tile and remeasuring and stuff. If you have a level, it's you can make a lot of things look good just because it's level. You got to make sure the thing is level. Your fence might look like, maybe it wasn't perfect, but if it's level, it makes a big difference. If it's not level, and if your boards are crooked, you can see that from a mile away. If it's level, so I think a level is important. I haven't covered that. I probably actually should do that on a Tool Tuesday, because I think it's very important to have around. And you can just get a small one. I did that on my how to hang a shelf, because if things are level, it just makes things good. But I didn't do it on a Tool Tuesday. But then, screwdrivers, I haven't talked about screwdrivers, although the drill, a lot of times you can get the attachments that act as a screwdriver anyway. And then a socket set is, it's a good place to start. You don't have to spend a whole lot of money, but it is nice, boy, when you get into certain things and go, I wish I had that. Okay, well, then maybe I should go get it. But you don't want to keep running back and forth to the hardware store. If you can help it, be nice to start accumulating some tools when you first get a house, especially.
Because that's what I loved about the book is, like, you're talking about personal finance, you're talking about buying a house, but you're also talking about how to make your garden, the furniture and stuff like that. And it's such a wide ranging topic of things. So people are kind of going, well, how do I finance that? But okay, I want to get a house. Okay. These are like massive life decisions. And it's so nice that you're there to provide these tips and things like that. I mean, I think a big thing for a lot of people is they've got to accept they're going to make mistakes, but that's part of the fun. It's like, you got a scrap wood, go and practice on it. It doesn't need to be perfect. And
right.
I think it's sometimes just letting our ego go and just thinking, okay, if we make a mistake, we can do it again. And that's why I feel like your videos are so great, because you're sort of saying, try that. If it doesn't work, try it again. Try it. You're not being punished. You're not feeling like we're not making mistakes. But you talked about forgiving your father. How did you go about doing that? Because that's something a lot of people struggle with, like accepting our pasts. And I keep saying to people, our pasts are not an indicator of your future. But for people who are struggling with, like forgiving their parents, is there any advice you could give them in that area?
Yeah, kind of like I talked about earlier. I think it's so important, because I think it was in my own best interest. When I finally saw it from that perspective, rather than, I need to hold this against them, when I finally realized it was in my best interest to let that go so that I could continue, so I could live my life, instead of chewing on that, I'm carrying around this baggage, I'm trying to make something out of myself, and I'm meanwhile picking up that baggage and carrying that around with me. Well, man, drop that baggage and let it, it doesn't, there's that, I always refer to that line from The Lion King where Rafiki hits Simba over the head with a stick, and he says, what was that for? And he says, doesn't matter. It's in the past. Because it's true, it's really, the past is the past. You can't do anything about the past. All you can do is, move on and move into the future. And if you continue to carry that weight of that baggage from the past into the future, you're only harming yourself. If you can see that perspective, I think it makes a world of difference. And I get it that people, I went through a lot. People have been through far worse than me. People have been through less than me and still think they're a victim. But, so it's hard to paint with a broad brush. But if I can encourage people to just think, sit back and think for a moment, how is this productive to keep dragging this into the future?
It's a great message, and it's something that, I struggled when I was younger, thinking I wish I was more involved with my dad, and now I think, I'm trying my hardest to build down that relationship, and I think sometimes you see people saying, well, I'm not going to do this with my own kids, so I've seen friends messed up with bad relationships with their parents and stuff, and that's why I'm glad we have people like yourself where we can go and learn these sorts of skills. But what was the inspiration then? You've got the amazing YouTube channel, you've got this amazing community. What was the inspiration for the book?
Yeah, well, there's certain things I can do on my channel that don't work so well in a book form, and vice versa. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's interesting because I got one review on Amazon that said, about my book. They gave me 3 stars instead of 5 and said, I really wish you would have showed how to tie a tie. Well, it just so happens I have that on my
Yeah.
channel, you know. And it's so much easier to show in person or online than it is to do diagrams in a book, in my opinion, for tying a tie. But then financial stuff, I can talk about financial stuff, but it's so much easier to kind of write it out and say, do this, do this, do this, do this. Like investing in mutual funds, I kind of walk you through how to do that. And it's, a lot of websites have made it pretty easy for people to be able to invest now. When I was younger, and I think I shared that in the book, you used to have to go to the library and I'd have to get this book called Morning Star. It's, about this thick and there's a couple volumes and you couldn't check it out. You'd sit in the library for a couple hours and research trying to figure out what's a good mutual fund. Well, now, you just go online and a few clicks away and go, oh, okay, the returns on this mutual fund are, and over a 10-year period, they're making this much money, and unfortunately, a lot of people, again, we talked about people, what you learn in high school, if you take your money and you just put it in the bank, you're not keeping up with inflation. The bank is the one they're not holding on to your money and putting it in a vault. They're investing it, so they're taking your money and investing it and then giving you a little pittance, to kind of tide you over when really I think it's good to have an emergency fund where you have money, but I think it's important. You got to invest, so that money is working for you. So that, that's the goal, is to try to have your money working for you. So you're not the only one working, your money's working for you. And it's pretty easy. Like I said, online, it's pretty easy to invest in pretty safe vehicles, like a mutual fund.
Because when you see that, like in some books, when they're showing like picture after picture, and you kind of stop and go, there must be something between those two. It's like tying a tie. You see the guy holding it like this, and then he's suddenly got a nice bow, and you're like,
right.
Where have I missed that? And that's what I like about your videos, is that you actually do it slowly, and it's dialed in, and then you show it from a different angle, and to give somebody 3 stars for something like that is,
yeah. Well, I thought it was funny they gave me 3 stars on my book, when in reality it's like, well, I did that on my on my channel. Mm-hmm. So it was a little disappointing that she was so quick to give me 3 stars and then make the comment. It was like, well, could you do a little research?
Because that's what I like about like the channel and the book, and that it's like my site is all about getting better 1% in each of our lives each day. And you're kind of showing people, okay, let's tie a tie. Okay, use that confidence from that to make your lawn better. Oh, you want to hang a gate? Yeah. Let's go do that. Oh, you want to do, like, you want to go camping with your kids? Right, here's how to set up a camping stove. You gradually build it, and now you're moving into, okay, let's get your personal finances sorted. Oh, let's talk about buying a house, and you want to do this with your family. Okay, let's do this, and you're helping people along the journey in life, and it's such an amazing thing. You should be super proud of what you're doing. But what would you say to people? How should they use the book? How should you use the channel? What if I was to go, like, say you were buying a copy for somebody? How would you want them to use that book to make their lives better?
Yeah, I'd like to see where the book could sit on people's shelves, because I think then they could use it as a reference for the how-tos. There's 58 how-tos. I promised 50, and I gave you eight bonus ones, because I figured, it's good to over or under promise and over perform. And so I gave 8 bonus ones. So you have 58. But I think if you can read the first part of the book, so it's it's tricky to know what category to put the book. I think Amazon has it under DIY, but it's more than a DIY. It's kind of how to do life from my experience. And this is how I walked it. And I'm trying to encourage people to live their lives too. And so through forgiving my dad and just taking the quality traits, and then I'm all through it, I'm trying to encourage people. So I honestly see it as more of a graduation gift, or as a sending your kid off to college gift, or something like that, where they're going out to this new venture. Here you go. Here's something to encourage you, more so than a DIY. But I do believe that the DIY is, like I was just talking about with finances, I think some of them are worth the price of the book. You can make that money back very easily in a mutual fund if you're not investing money. And if you learn one thing from it, that you can actually start getting some traction by investing, and trying to live a little bit below your means, so that you don't live paycheck to paycheck. I think all that stuff is important for people to understand at an early age, especially.
Because it's definitely that's the part I liked about the book, which you could pick it up. Okay, my toilet's blocked. Okay, how would Rob say to unbreak it? Okay, how do I do this? How to do that? But it's the extra stuff you put in. It's the dad jokes. It's the character skills. It's the suggestions of making a better future for us, as well as fixing the problem or doing the job we have at the hand. And it's amazing. But what would you want the evolution of your brand to be? I mean, I've got thousands of questions. I'm trying to. I feel bad because we've jumped around a bit, but there's so much about I wanted to talk to you about. So I'd love to do a round two and really get into this sort of thing. But what would you, if you had to say to somebody what to take from this interview, what would you say to them? What would you want them to take as a sort of overall universal message from you?
Yeah, I think the main thing, and I have a quote in my book, and I don't know if I have the quote handy. Oh, yeah, here it is. Yeah. So it says, "What matters to me is not so much that you learn how to tie a tie, it's that you learn and feel deeply within yourself that somebody cares for you." I think, the underlying message of that somebody actually cares for you and somebody's rooting for you, even if it's through a video, I think hopefully that can go a long ways with somebody that maybe doesn't feel like they have anybody in their corner. And I'm looking forward to, 10 years down the road, hearing, 5 years down the road, maybe a year down the road of, this person, who knows, we might have the next Elon Musk that just needed a boost, or next Bill Gates, somebody that maybe didn't have somebody in their corner, that they just needed a little nudge. And then this guy gave me the confidence to do this and do that. And next thing you know, I'm, look at me now. I'm looking forward to that. I think there will be stories, and I've already heard some stories that, I've had one lady started a whole new business after watching my Tool Tuesday series on a drill. It kind of gave her the confidence that this is something I wanted to do. And during the pandemic, she started a business. But yeah, so that excites me, that type of thing where people have stood on my shoulders, or not necessarily my shoulders, but somebody else's shoulders, that maybe, they learn from them, and then they can, I think that we need to understand that that's how we got where we're at. We've advanced so far technologically and everything, but it's because we keep standing on the previous generation's shoulders and going further and going further. So if I can have people stand on my shoulders for what it's worth, I'll take it.
I love that. I love how you're empowering so many people, and it's like you're saying, is giving them somebody to support them. I know we're over our time. I can't thank you enough for coming on. You help so many people, but how can we keep finding out more about you and seeing your videos? How can we connect with you on social media? Because I know you're going to get so many fans from this.
Yeah. So, one way you could support me is just by watching my videos. I think it's important to, I understand that they're how-tos, so you might not need the how-tos, but, I think there's a tendency, and my book too, if you can review my book, if you read it and review it, I think that goes a long way. Right now it has 101 reviews on Amazon, and it's averaging 5 stars. So I feel good that it is a good book. It's a quality book. I just don't have the name recognition that, somebody else that sells, millions of copies, because I don't have the name recognition. But I hope that at some point this will be a kind of a reference book for people. So yeah, the support with that would be very helpful.
And if you just want to give a little shout out to your website, to if somebody was going on to Amazon, what would they need to type to find your amazing work?
Yeah, it's Dad, how do I? Rob Kenney, and it'll pop up Dad, comma, how do I? And then I have my YouTube channel, Dad, how do I? And I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook as well. Yeah, so I appreciate it because I'm trying to be as faithful as I can to people, and so I appreciate the loyalty on the other end too, because that means something to me. I don't necessarily always get to read all the comments that people make on YouTube, but I have read every single review about my book. So if that encourages you to actually make a comment on my book, I will read it.
And finally, what's your favorite dad joke? What's the one that just has you rolling over laughing?
I've used it so much though. This is probably my favorite one. I got a couple, but so the one about the antenna and the satellite. Have you heard this yet? Or you probably heard it on my channel. Do you want me to share that then? So an antenna and a satellite got married. The wedding wasn't much, but the reception was incredible.
When I heard them, I was like, every time I hear them, I'm just cringing, but I'm going, I love them. I love them.
Okay, well, I got another one that's a little more new, but this is on my channel too, I think, about do you hear about the short fortune teller who escaped from prison?
No.
He's a small medium at large.
Well, that's it for another week, and thank you for listening. It's now time to take what you've learned and use it to develop and enhance your life with the key points mentioned. Listen, try it, embrace it, use it, and crush it. Now's your time to hit that next level in your life. If you liked this episode, then please leave a comment on the show notes or a review of the show on your podcast platform. Everything helps evolve the show. Until next week, keep seeking the next level in your life.